All right, let's do you want to do Lewis versus I always forget if it's
Smelling,
Is
smelling,
it
smelling, smelling,
Schmeling? So there's
smelling.
no
Smell.
sh,
There's no really no. Well, you got to remember we're here in America.
Schmeling or
Well, see, you
Schmelming.
got we're in America, so we say word the way we want to say it. The Germans might, because they said
Schmeling?
Max Smelling. They said smelling
Okay.
over there. When I was in Germany, they said Max Smelling. Over
Oh,
here,
okay.
we pronounce it smelling because it smells, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
said smelling. But then
Uh,
it was Max Smelling because it's in the enunciation is much faster. So it's like
okay.
Max Smelling, Joe Louis, Max Smelling.
Gotcha.
You know.
All right. Well, let's talk about Lewis versus Schmeling then, because
Yes.
that's there's an adjustment first by, or I guess an excellent like game plan by Schmeling, because he famously said in his German accent, "I see something," you know.
Yes.
And then the second fight, there's the adjustment by Lewis. So since you wanted to talk about this, why don't you start us off, and I'll jump in here or
Okay.
there.
And the first, and talking about which was probably perhaps no doubt the first big rematch in heavyweight boxing history,
Mm.
Lewis and Smelling, right? And there's two things that made the fight what it was. During that time, you had the so-called Germany aristocracy that they were
Mm.
trying to pronounce around the world, being the superior race and all this whole 9 yards things, right?
Mm.
So that was probably and you and I have talked about this before when we talked about culture making fights as big as they are.
Mm.
It couldn't have got any bigger than having a country, a nation, and a nation fighting one another, because
Mm.
everybody's fighting for this nation. In the
That's
terms,
some Greek mythology shit right there, isn't it?
yes, it is.
It be
Yes,
you
it
know
is.
it's like the two champions are going to decide the fate of the war. They're going to meet in front of the two armies, and they both agree to background who, like, they might not back down, but if your guy loses, you'll definitely be discouraged.
That's right.
It's not good for you to see.
Well, see, in this case, it was a thing of, and I remember reading it. Some, of course, years later, I wasn't there, but my children think I was, but I wasn't there.
No one thinks you're that old, man.
No, not that old. But when in reading it later, and actually, I met Smelling I was in New York. I got a chance to. I didn't meet him. I was in the same place he was, and Joe Louis was there, and Jack Dempsey were there at the place in New York, right? And a guy had written an article, and in this article he said this was a fight for Max. It was like for God and country, but not necessarily in that order, country and God, because that's what it meant to him. If had he lost that fight the first time, he probably goes back to kind of like the Olympics with Jesse Owens, where Owens just went over and just dominated, where the black athletes just dominated the German athletes, the rest of the world too, for that matter. But they dominated the rest of the athletes, right? And it was so bad that Hitler got up and left. He couldn't take it, So
he was a little bit of a crybaby when he
yes,
lost.
he was alive.
So I hear.
So yeah, exactly, right. So as a matter of fact, that's why he killed himself. He couldn't take it.
Yep, that's what I meant. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a crybaby right there.
That's a crybaby.
I'm not even playing anymore.
Yeah, yes. Give me my ball. I'm going home. So what happened was when Smelling, and remember, Jonas was kind of young at this time, a little bit young at this time too.
Mm.
So and Smelling was a little older than he was, as all those guys were. You got to remember, Dempsey, Smelling, all those guys were older than Joe was.
Mm-hmm.
But Smelling had said, I've seen some things in his fights. And that he does. And and after I got a chance to see the videos, I found out exactly what it was. Lewis had the same problem that all guys, big punchers, have with good jabs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They throw it, but it's how they bring it back. And if you look at that fight, you will see that the first thing that Smelling started to do was to counter the jab. So Lewis would pop back and then bam, right hand quickly. And I bring that over into the future as we get to that, when you'll see when Ali fought George. Strong jab, bam, bam, power, right?
Mm-hmm.
but you're not bringing it back. That's what I do. Boom, you do. I time you, and I come right with the right hand every time. It works every time, really. And
Yeah.
I think he's seen that. So the counter right hand did his work. And after a few rounds, it just picked up on Joe. Joe caught him with some terrific shots. But as I said before, Mac was fighting for both God and country. And he wanted to win that fight. I don't think the rematch mattered as much to him, but let's stay at the first one. But in that first fight, the fight was nip and tuck all the way.
I've heard a couple times that Schmeling was actually very anti. I don't want to say the word because we'll get like well, we're not monetizing the videos anyway, so screw it. Actually, he was like very anti-Nazi kind of a thing.
Yes,
but he was still
yes, he was
still willing to fight for the German government at the same time.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you know, I haven't done enough research to really pass judgment on the dude one way or the other, but he did not seem to be like he was fighting for the, you know, the white race is superior kind of deal. But at the same time, he still seemed eager to represent his country, like you were saying, represent Germany.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's not the idea. There's no one particular if a person. It's like to say, Joe Louis said, well, I'm fighting with all of the blacks of the nations on my back, because with what? I'm representing America. You can't represent a nation without representing one part of it, without representing the whole thing. Not the nasty. Joe Louis had donated money to the cause of World War II during that time.
Yeah,
so
a lot of money. Yeah,
a lot of money. Yeah, a lot of money. So, and it's not like he was saying, well, you know what? I'm going to fight this guy because he's a Nazi. Or they said Nazi. That's how they said. It was so funny to hear him say it. They said, you know, he's a Nazi or not. You know, I don't know what proper pronunciation is myself. But anyway, that's how they always both pronounce it. But Schmeling had to be careful because remember, he had to go back home. He didn't have a choice. So in his case, and the things that were taking place, even though he was full-blood German, but the things that were taking place over there, we had no idea how bad it was until films and videos started coming off over there. But in the fight itself, I mean, I thought the fight was pretty close. He hit Lewis in the 10th, I think it was the 9th or 10th round, because I've had a chance to review it, and cut him with a great shot. And I thought Joe was gone, but he didn't. He came back. Joe came back and counted him with one. But I like the fact of the tremendous condition that both those guys were in.
Well, Lewis hadn't taken a whole lot of punishment up until that point anyways, if I'm remembering correctly.
Exactly.
That can really help. Like the difference between, sometimes it's just one fight. Like if a fighter can have one bad fight and then all of a sudden their chin is like half of what it was. But if they took very little damage all the way up to that point, then that's like money in the bank. You've saved up kind of that armor that you only have so much of. Like you could rest for 6 months, you could rest for a year, but you know, you could build some of it back. But really, once it's gone, you know, it's permanent.
The chin gets soft after a while.
Exactly.
You know, that's what that term, like they call it, the glass jaw effect. It doesn't come pretty much from one fight. You get a guy that can be tough. Like you say, he can be in a lot of wars. And then all of a sudden, that one night, it's like, boom, you know, so man, he hit him he's been taking those shots all the time. Well, that's just the chin finally went. In Joe's case, I think he just got tired. And when he went from having to fight so hard, like you said, he hadn't had fights like that. Schmeling had a few. Braddock and some other fights that he had been in was pretty tough like that. So I think that the toughness of it in that first fight belonged completely to Max Schmeling.
Yeah, and it was a genius game plan. I like collaborate with this kickboxing champion, Gabriel Varga, every now and again. And one of his videos, he beat this like super great American Muay Thai dude named Kevin Ross, I think. That dude liked to set everything up off of his jab, right? Just like Lewis. Now, he didn't notice that he dropped the jab. What he noticed about this guy is that he didn't elevate his shoulder when he jabbed, because he's a Muay Thai guy. They don't pay a lot of attention to their punches. So it's just like, what's wrong with this? Well, what's wrong with this is it's not as good as that.
It's not as good as that. That's right.
That's the difference between life and death, you know? And that really proved the case for Joe Louis for sure. Because he set everything up off of his jab pretty much.
Everything was off of it. And it was so good most of the time you could relax. You know, you could say, bam. George had that same thing. He hit a guy, you know you hurt him, right? Bam. So he's like, okay, I can relax a little bit. Yeah, but then all of a sudden the guy says, oh, okay, you're going to keep leaving in there. And a smart guy, like a Schmeling, who was at the time, it was like, okay, come on. You can, and you watch enough videos back then. They had, can you imagine what it must have been like to try to get film in that period of time? But he had enough, he watched enough, he had seen enough to know that this guy relaxes his jab a little more than what he should. Because if you look after that fight, you never see Lewis do that anymore.
No, I mean, that brings us to the second fight where he just, didn't he take him out the first round?
He took him out the first or second round. I forget what it was. But
it was like right away.
Yes, but if you notice it again, and if for the young kids that look at this, tell them to notice the difference in where Lewis was with his thing at that time. His approach was straight, more here, and it's like boom, back, boom, straight right in. Because he knew what what those mistakes are. There are some guys that cannot change, especially in heavyweights, David, when it's been successful for you. You don't want to. Mike Tyson could never change. And that was his problem. He was never going to be anything but this. That was it. That's all he wasn't.
Well, Tyson wasn't even doing what he used to do by the end there. It was weird. It was like he'd just throw punches and look surprised the person didn't fall down. It's like because you weren't doing any of the stuff you were doing before.
No, you wasn't doing this here.
But you're just walking forward, taking shots, and throwing a shot.
And if I hit you, I'll hurt you. I'm hoping I'll hurt you. But if there's always this night, like Dick Sally used to say, my brother's trained to say, one night, the magic doesn't come. You hit a guy, he's still standing there.
Yeah, what are you gonna do then?
What are you gonna? That's when you
gotta be a boxer.
That's when you gotta be a boxer, and that's when your condition really comes in. There was a fighter by the name of George Scrap Iron Johnson, a heavyweight 60s, 70s fighter. Never was a journeyman. He was the ultimate journeyman. Fought everybody. And if you could not go rounds with this guy, the punches went down, the boxers beat him. Okay, but you had to go some rounds with this guy. You had to be in shape because he was going to be there for 4 or 5 rounds, regardless of what you hit him with. He wasn't going anywhere. There's another guy, Stanford Harris from Jamaica. They call him the Big Bamboo. It'll come to me in a minute. But anyway, he's from Jamaica, Stanford Harris, right? Another one, same style. You could hit these guys in the stomach and with body shots. They were going to be there.
What's his name? Chavello too, right?
George Chavello.
Yeah. I went through a thing where I watched like all the guys' fights. He should be dead like 50 times over. I think he's still alive.
He's still living. He's in a wheelchair, but he's still living.
He never once got knocked down.
Never touched the cameras. I seen him about 12 or 15 years ago, somewhere in Vegas, at a thing that they had, maybe a little longer, but around that much time. He was, he was, and the thing about it, the guy still had marbles. You know what I mean? That was the most amazing thing. Now the physical part of that, you can decide whether you want to be one of the toughest guys in this game or one of the smartest guys in this game. And sometimes you can have them both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and sometimes it's luck of the draw too.
The luck of the draw. That's what I heard Oscar De La Hoya say one time about it. He got upset about a fight he had. And he said, if you guys want to see me all bloody and cut up, he said, it ain't going to happen. That's just the way it is. I'm not going to be that Mexican fighter where everybody says, oh, boy, didn't he take some shots? He got this, No, I'm not going, that's not going to be me.
No, after Manny, he's just like, I'm done.
Yep.
That's it. Done.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't need another beating like that. I am retired. I understand I don't have what I used to have. I'm going to do lots of cocaine and put on high heels.
And put on some other lady
fishnet stockings and
do all those
right into the sunset. Yeah,
I'm sure this
you do.
I'm sure this won't make the broadcast, Dave.
It's fine. We're not monetizing it yet anyway. But one last thing about the second fight though.
Yes.
As impressive as Schmeling was for the first fight, I always felt that after Lewis got nailed a couple times, he was just giving him too much respect, but he also gave everyone too much respect. That's like, he was like slow, plodding, methodical. Aside from the jab, the other thing that Lewis changed is he just went for the knockout right away. It was like, Hagler Hearns kind of thing. Like it was the war. Just like, I'm not, this guy's too clever. I'm not going to give him time to figure out. It was almost like it looked like he could have just done that the first fight if he'd ignored his jab. I've never seen anyone as good at finding an opening in certain regards as Lewis, because Schmeling liked to fight from a kind of pseudo Philly shell a little bit, and then Lewis just started like he like moved his elbow out of the way and hit his like side, and then he like pushed down his got his hand like way in his face and pulled down his guard and then went right over his shoulder. I saw him do that with another guy that used the Philly shell too. I mean, Lewis's speed, accuracy, timing, but man, could he just find the tiniest little openings in your guard and then just throw so hard there too?
But if you remember in the first fight, these are the things that actually, and I think this is probably what made the fight perhaps go a little longer. It's almost as if Lewis was experimenting with him, because you could see him, you know, more or less reaching out to block his punches before they got there, not reacting with his punches. It was like, okay, and then he come back, bop, you know, come back again, and then boom. But rather than, like you said, making the approach of saying, I want to get this thing over with. So you kind of seen him doing just those kind of things. So, and in the second fight, I'm saying, if you look up, he was focused. And remember, he had come back, and Joe Lewis was a very proud American. This I knew, you know, and as I said, probably of all the two of the guys in the sport of boxing, were three that I got to actually meet, know, and was just completely, totally, you know, just like gaga with, was Joe Lewis, Ray Robinson, and Sandy Sadler. Three of the most technical boxers you ever seen.
Yeah, wizards, like technical wizards, masterminds. Yeah,
mastermind. It's like Joe Lewis. He told me. I remember hearing him talk, because a lot of times when they were talking, I couldn't talk, so I had to listen. Because he talk, you know, because what are they gonna tell? What am I gonna tell him? You know, they're saying, oh, yeah, like, you know, I'm saying, you know, like the time you fought Schmeling, you're gonna tell me, boy, shut up. You know, so, but I like to listen to them talk. You know, and there were times when he said that he saw a punch before he landed it. He knew where it was going to go. He said, I'm going to hit it right on top of his, you know, I'm going to hit him right here. Bam! He said he did it. That's amazing. You hear baseball pitchers sometimes say that, you know, I'm going to put that slider right. And that's what he was like, you know, and that's what he did. He just, bam! And he said, I kept saying to myself, and he talked about the fight with Bear and all those guys, right?
He could like, he could like visualize the angle that he needed.
Yeah. He was so far ahead. He was so far ahead, man. It's amazing, David. This guy, those guys, and Ray Robinson, the same way. You know, Ray said he just, you know, his thing was he just got out. He treated it like dancing. So when he threw punches, his feet and hands moved. If you see videos of him, you saw his feet and hands moved at the same time.
There's only one video of him close to his prime, and it's this like really bad quality video where like you could barely make out, like it's all grainy and everything. But like I thought he would dance before, but in this earlier video, it's like he's straight on putting up a tap dancing performance.
As he's boxing, I'm telling you, you know, this guy, they told. He said, these are, I heard them say, you know, it was amazing. Sanders, you know, Willie, Sandy Sadler, and those guys, man, it was just, I wish at that time I'd had a video myself to just have had those guys, you know, to be able to just let people hear them talk, just being themselves, because they could do that with each other. There was some lonely guys, Archie Moore, when they were on the road a lot, they were lonely guys because they slept in box cars sometimes, the back of buses in their cars, and they spent a lot of time with just them and the guy. And so they got to be, that's why I said a lot of times people thought they may have been angry, but they weren't angry. They were just used to being, the boxer's life is a lonely life anyway. And well, today it's not, because you got social media and all these damn guys out here now, they got, you know, 300 million fans, and they think they're the greatest things in the world. But, you know, back then it was just them.
It was their craft. Yeah, back then it was their craft, and they like to just talk shop. Yeah.
Right.
And most normal everyday people probably didn't care about like, oh, if you put your jab like this, it'll do, you know.
It didn't matter.
No, yeah, that, and also being it's also lonely at the top. So both those things, it must have been very hard to relate to people.
It was, yes, it was.
But anyways, everyone should 100% check out the Joe Lewis versus Max Schmeling fights. They're absolutely incredible.
1 and 2. The difference in it is amazing. The difference in 1, the difference in 2 is like, wow.
Inspiring. Yeah. You want to be inspired, watch those two. Yeah.
Yes.
You like watching people get the crap beaten out of them. You can watch those two.